All right, well, wait 1 second here while I get it in presentation mode. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yes?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, good. All right, so welcome to today's LinkedIn Tuesdays. Thanks for your patience today. We are going to be looking at LinkedIn from a recruiter's eye, which is a very interesting way to look at this. Please note that this event will be recorded. It will be on the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Comments in the Zoom chat window do not appear in the recording. You can use the chat box to answer your questions so I can facilitate those, and we can go from there. Just to give you a little bit of background for Jeff Morris, as I'm the guest host, he founded Career DFW in 2008. He started careerusa.org in 2012 because he saw that there was a bigger need for job seekers around the country. He wrote the book Your Job Search, which you can buy on Amazon, or he always has a copy with him. And he also leads the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group since 2007. He's a member of the PIT Crew since 2017. And what the PIT Crew is, for those of you who don't know, it's a practice interview team. So there you can practice interviewing before you have the real interview with your interviewer. As you can see on the screen, we have 4 distinguished presenters that are with us on rotation. We have Locke Alderson, Terry Sullivan, Ruth Lipsky, and Kurt VandeMotter. And so with that, today we're going to be having Kurt VandeMotter. And I'm going to just give you a little bit of background on Kurt. He's recently recognized by Forbes as one of the top search firms in the US, and he's been nominated by careers, candidates, and companies. His experience spans corporate America, nonprofits, family-owned business, and much more. For the past 10 years, he's dramatically expanded his career coaching as owner of Linked Executive Search, a company that focuses hard-to-fit positions. He brings proven executive expertise from Fortune 500 and startup companies as a leader in sales, marketing, operations, management, and product development. So with that, I will turn it over to Kurt. So Kurt, you should be able to share, and I'll stop sharing.
Great. Listen, everybody, I appreciate your time. And Patty's going to be my wingman. My daughter's got a son that's 4 years old, and we watched my friend Top Gun last night, and so Patty's going to be my wingman this afternoon. And if you've got questions, I want to make sure you raise your hand and put those out for us to all learn from it. I've been doing this for a number of years, and so what I start out with always is that this is not about me. This is about you all. You've got me for the next 45 minutes or a little bit more than that if we need to. And if you've got questions that you've always wanted to ask a recruiter, if there's something that you've just been dying to know about, or you've got an axe to grind, whatever you've got, this meeting is your meeting, and I'm here to help you. I've got a job, and most of you are looking for or in transition. And so I'm here to help you guys. And so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to raise your hand and we'll get it taken care of. Great introduction, Patty. Thanks. I'm a hiring manager, so I came out of corporate America not as a recruiter, not as a retained search executive, but as a hiring manager. I came out of Pepsi, Dr. Pepper 7-Up, and I joined Craig McCaw, which became AT&T. I did some startup technology companies, and then I ended my career with a company called Intervoice, which was in Dallas, an interactive voice response company. 16 years ago, I was on vacation with my family, and my boss called me and told me that I could stay on vacation as long as I wanted to because she was going to eliminate my job. So that's when I looked into recruiting and decided that this was a pivot that I wanted to make for the rest of my career. So this is what I've been doing for 16 years. And over the 16 years, I've probably filled about 800 jobs. As Patty said, I work in a lot of different spaces. But what we're really here today is to talk about LinkedIn Recruiter, and I will share that. But first, let's get into a couple of other quick things. And I always like to start with a brief introduction about the difference between recruiters. Because everybody on this call is going to come across, they're going to get a phone call, they're going to get an email, there's going to be conversations in your search with recruiters. And it's important that you understand what kind of recruiters there are out there. And I'm not talking about good, bad, and ugly recruiters. I'm talking about inside recruiters. There are inside recruiters. These are recruiters that work for companies. They generally, you take a larger company, an AT&T, they may have 500-600 recruiters. They have recruiters that work in sell site development, sales and marketing, retail, headquarter, executive level positions. They've got a lot of different recruiters that work for their organization. Okay. Smaller organizations, depending on the economy and what's going on, smaller companies might have one recruiter because they're constantly having turnover. And so they've got an internal recruiter that works for the organization and supports their needs. So, what is the difference between internal recruiters and external recruiters? Well, internal recruiters, number one, they know the job, they know the company, they know what they're looking for. They've been sitting with the hiring manager for maybe a week, maybe 2 months, looking to fill this job, and so they know what the hiring manager is looking for. They know the team typically, but there is a difference between internal recruiters and external recruiters. We'll talk a little bit more about that after we talk about external recruiters. So external recruiters, there's two kinds. There's contingent recruiters, and contingent recruiters, they they work for companies for free, basically. So a company might have an opening, and they might engage one or two or three contingent recruiters. It doesn't cost them any money. And the only time it costs them money is when they deliver a candidate the company hires. Okay. So contingent recruiters, they work quickly. They do have databases of candidates. They keep really tight measures on everything because they have to move very quickly. When they're competing against other recruiters, it's their job to get as many resumes in front of the company as quickly as they can to make sure that their candidates get representative. And if there's a candidate that's going to be hired, they want it to be their candidate, not my candidate or another candidate from another recruiter. Those are contingent recruiters. And then I'm a retained search executive. So companies call me. I work exclusively. So I don't compete against any other recruiters. I work exclusively. I take a retainer up front, and then I take a percentage of the final fee based on salary and other things that are calculated in that. So internal recruiters, contingent recruiters, retained recruiters. You're driving down 75, going 80 miles an hour, and you get a phone call and you're looking for a job. And whenever you get a phone call from a number that you don't recognize, you're really anxious to talk to somebody because it could be somebody that is returning an ad that you put out there, or somebody's returning a message. And so you're trying to return, or you want to return that call or get on that phone call with that person as quickly as you possibly can. But I encourage you to, number one, if that's the case, driving down the highway, let it go to voicemail, pull over to the side of the road if you've got time, listen to that voicemail, or as you're driving, get off at the next exit. But there's nothing wrong, is my point is, there's nothing wrong when you get a phone call from a recruiter to ask at some point in the conversation, generally earlier than later, can you give me a definition of what kind of recruiter, or what category are you working as, an internal recruiter or are you an external recruiter? By knowing that is going to help you understand and manage the landscape and not necessarily the next steps, but if you're getting called back by an internal recruiter, then you've probably been through their applicant tracking system and you're pretty close to what they're looking for in general. Um, but if it's an external recruiter, then certainly you want to understand where their role is, how long have they been looking, have they presented candidates yet, where are they at in the process. Um, but but the biggest thing you want to always try to get out of a recruiter, because it's the question that I ask every company that I go to work for, is what is the problem that the company's trying to solve with this hire? Okay. That is always going to be the question that you want to try to get the answer to. And it comes back to what's the biggest problem the company that you're working for, internal recruiter, external recruiter, that the company's trying to solve? Because when you can start to understand that, then you can start to answer questions in a completely different way than you might have just knowing that they've got an opening. So take the time, ask the questions, don't just jump into it, because so many times when we, as recruiters, when we talk to candidates, my general instincts are, I tell people, and I know that candidates don't like to hear this, but there are many times that candidates get on the phone and they just vomit. They just tell them they don't even know what I'm looking for. And I might say to a candidate, "Tell me a little bit about yourself." And there's times that 35 minutes into the call, I've had to say, "Okay, stop. You've given me more than I need to know about you. You have not taken a breath yet. Take a breath and let me give you a little bit of background of what I'm looking for so that we can determine if this is a good role." So I just want you to be cautious as candidates. I hope that this is a good tip to take a deep breath, try to understand what it is that they're looking for, have your elevator pitch ready. This is a great time when you get a cold call from a recruiter and they ask to, give you, tell me a little bit about yourself. Go into that 30-second elevator pitch and tell them the basics of who you are. Take a deep breath, get a piece of paper out and a pen out, get ready to take notes, get ready to ask some questions, but get to the bottom of what they're trying to look for. So that's one of my biggest suggestions. What we're going to do is I'm going to go in and share a screen here. Let's see. Give me a minute. I'm going to let's go. So one of the things I try to make sure everybody understands when I do this demonstration is that I'm going to go into LinkedIn Recruiter, and can everybody see my screen, Patty? Is that showing up?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Good. What we want to do is I'm going to go into, you saw me go into my LinkedIn page, and then I've got a special page that I go into Recruiter. What you need to understand about Recruiter is that LinkedIn Recruiter is a product that was built on a separate set of APIs that LinkedIn developed with actually Korn Ferry a number of years ago. Okay. So again, one of the questions companies ask me when they call and they say, we'd like your help with this search. What's your database? And my conversation is, when you're hiring a retained search executive, you really don't want my database, because my database is fresh every time I start a new search. I open up my network in a number of different ways, in a number of different avenues. I don't have 5 of my favorite candidates that when I have a VP of finance role that I go to, that I call those 5 people. It's just not that fluid. And if you're working with a recruiter is that fluid, I think you want to make sure that they also open up their, umbrella a little bit further, because if they are just dealing with 5 or 6 candidates for all the jobs they work with, then they're never going to see the plethora of the amazing talent that's really out there. So I go about every search from scratch. But this product was developed by Korn Ferry because they got tired of their database being outdated every night when they turn off their computer. So they went to LinkedIn and they said, we need to develop a product that we can use to better track our access, our communications, conversations with our candidates. And so they developed LinkedIn Recruiter. So when I take you through this product, we'll do a search, and so you can actually see me in action and working on an actual job search. But just keep in mind that you're seeing live data. If you see a friend of yours that I pop up on their screen, I try to be positive about everything I give feedback to, but you might see some stuff and I can't hide that, because there's a lot of people on this call and I wouldn't ever be able to, um, um, you know, um, make any filters that would make sense. So we're going to go into LinkedIn Recruiter. We click on that box there, and then it pops up this window that shows me the different roles that I've had and that I've worked on. Okay. But what we're going to do is we're going to go in here to this advanced files. And this is where I start every one of my searches. Okay. So to give you an idea from a recruiter's perspective, I can search for job titles. I can search for location. I can search for workplace types. Okay. Hybrid, remote, on site. I can type in skills and assessments that I might be looking for a particular role. A lot of times when I'm meeting with a company, I might be starting a new search here. And I was talking to the CEO the other day and I asked him, I said, what are some of the brands that you like the most in the marketplace? They're in the transportation logistics business. So, what are the brands that you like the best? Well, that's a good question. But in his particular case, he was like, well, these are the brands that we like in our industry. But for this specific role, we think we'd like somebody out of industry. Okay. Well, that's great data for me right up front. Okay. Number one, he gave me a couple of names that he likes. So I can search for people to work for those companies. Or maybe there's people in those companies that know other great people. But then he's also given me a huge piece of data that says, we would really like somebody out of our industry and not particularly in our industry. Great piece of data. I
Kurt,
can
how frequent is that? Because usually we hear it's easier to land a job when you're going in the same kind of industry, right? That you've had experience in versus looking for a candidate outside of the industry.
yeah, this particular role is going to be a vice president of people strategy. And
Hmm.
so I told you they're in the logistics business. And so it's a new role for their organization. They're growing exponentially. And they don't necessarily need somebody that the things that they want this executive to accomplish.
Hmm.
And I haven't even gotten the search yet, so it's all premature. But the things that they're looking for this executive to do, an executive coming out of a number of different industries could bring great value to what they're trying to accomplish.
Hmm.
So it
Okay.
is unusual, but that's the difference between, you know, I'm not a contingent recruiter, so I don't just take a job description and start looking for candidates. I have very thoughtful conversations with the executives that I work with to try to find out upfront as much as I can find out about what is the biggest problem you're trying to solve. Well, in this case, it's growth. They've got all the basics. They don't need somebody to do payroll. They don't need somebody to do the basic HR responsibilities. They need somebody that's more strategic. So
Hmm.
getting that information up front really, really helpful, whether I get the search or not. Sometimes companies will give me a list of schools that we really like candidates that come out of, you know, I did a search for an oil company over in Midland, and all the kids, three kids, all went to tech. Um, so they like tech, but they had great respect for A&M. So companies give me schools that I can search for. I look for that as well. Years of graduation. This is going to be the question somebody's going to ask, and I might as well just bring it out right now. This is where I can search for age. Okay, if you were to say age, um, did you graduate in 74 or did you graduate in 95? I don't want somebody to graduate in 2020 in 2034 that they haven't even gotten into middle school yet, right? Um, but but I want somebody that graduated in college. They've got 2017. They've got 5 years of experience. So it shows me now that within this search, there's about 25 million people that I can talk to. Okay, so if I did that, and I can speak honestly, um, that I don't use that criteria because there's very few times, if any, that I can tell you in my where'd you come from? Um, that very few times have I ever had a company say to me that we want somebody young. Um, there's more times that in the businesses that I work with, because I do a lot of family business, there's times that we're looking for somebody to work in a succession plan, and we want somebody for 8 years because the next generation is coming up in 5 years, and we want somebody, so that's somebody that may not be 40 years old. They may be 60 years old, but they want to work for another 10 years. Okay. So I know the age thing comes up frequently, but I want everybody on the phone to know that I've been doing this 16 years, and I don't think that twice in 16 years and over 800 searches that I use this graduation thing as a search tool.
So
I can
Kurt,
put
we
in,
have a question in the chat.
yeah,
What if you don't list your graduation year? Some people said I've left it off
you can leave, yeah, you
intentionally.
absolutely you can leave it off, and then and then it won't. If I did search for graduation criteria, you wouldn't come up in that search. But again,
So,
I don't think it's a huge risk. If you feel like you are at that age where you don't want to put the age you grad or the year you graduated, then just leave it off. That's fine. It's
mhm,
going to be on your resume. If it's a company you end up, really liking, you're going to have to put it on the application. So it's not a date that's going to go away. But for this purpose, you can leave it off of there. I think the thing that I look for more, and not necessarily with candidates that have got 15, 20 years of experience, but certainly when I'm doing younger searches and looking for companies that are looking for younger people, I'm more concerned about the candidate that it took them 7 years to get out of college than I
mhm.
am what year they graduated. And
Yeah, so I think that the big question here from the audience is, the fear is the ageism. So
yep,
that's why we've left it off of LinkedIn, which means if I recently took it off of mine, I wouldn't even come up in your search if you were
I might
looking
not,
for
you
me.
might not come up, you might come up for some of the other keywords that I'm looking for though, Patty. So that's
Ah,
why,
okay.
I wouldn't, if I was only searching for that, if I didn't put any other search criteria in there, you wouldn't
Hmm.
show up.
Okay.
Okay. But there's not a recruiter out there that searches for age and age only, because I got to look for a salesperson or a marketing person or a finance,
Right.
so yeah. So
Okay. Thanks for
leave it off.
clarifying.
Yep. Industries, pretty simple. Keywords. You may hear keywords talked about in job search a lot. So let me give you the overview on keywords. Number one is, this is where I can build a Boolean of a string. I can say looking for sales, not marketing, digital, not traditional, agency, not client side. So I can build a Boolean search and drop it in there, and it'll help going through LinkedIn decipher and find me candidates. Now, when I do that, I typically don't put anything else in there. I just build a Boolean search to see what I come up with first. So I don't necessarily put a title. I put a city in there if I'm looking for a city or a state. Um, and I do that first. Um, before I go in and put in and add in all the different accolades that I need to for a particular search. So keyword searches are really important for candidates because LinkedIn gives you the ability to build a very robust slate of data of who you are. Okay. And you can update it every day at no fee, no cost, and you can modify it. Okay. So I used to carry a notebook with me, and every meeting that I'd go to when I was in job search, I'd make a list of new keywords. Somebody would use a word in a meeting, I'd write that down. I've done that before. We all know the obvious: P&L management, people management, leadership, communication, all of those. But as you go through job descriptions, there may be times that there's something in a job description that comes up that is something that you've done. Early in my career, I was with Pepsi and I did route settlement. Route settlement is so old, it's so non existent today. But 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I was working for the Board and Dairy Company, and they were looking for route settlement people. Well, that's not a very common keyword to put in your LinkedIn profile unless you've done it. But that's an example of going back in your career and bringing keywords forward that are that the companies might search for. And we want to smother our LinkedIn profile with those keywords. So in the summary section, let's start there. Really, really important to build out a robust summary section where you use the 2,500 characters and you put in the keywords. You'll see in my LinkedIn profile, because I'm a recruiter, that my keywords in there, I've just given a list: headhunter, recruiter, executive search consultant. I've made a list of 20 keywords so that if a company is looking for a recruiter and they use a different adjective to describe what I do, then maybe I might pop up on their list. Whereas if I didn't put those keywords in there, then I might not in other words. So keywords are critical. In each job, you can put keywords. I encourage you not to cut and paste your resume into LinkedIn. Under each of the jobs, build out robust profiles of what you've done. You've got an opportunity here to tell stories of what your accomplishments have been. Great way to put in numbers and talk about things that aren't in your resume because it's so brief. It's bulleted. Um, Go back to the summary section, something I highlight with every candidate. I talk about everywhere I go. If you are actively looking for a job, number one, I want you to put that green wreath on. I'll tell you why in a minute. And number second, I want you to put your email address and your phone number in your summary section of LinkedIn. And why is that? Well, because only 3% of candidates reply to messages in LinkedIn. Okay. And so if I click on your profile and you're a candidate that I want to talk to, I only have one option, and that's to send you an in-mail. If I'm conducting a new search, I can sit at my computer in a day and send out 150 in-mails. Now, thankfully, my numbers are higher than the average. I'm at about 7.5 or 8%. But imagine that I sent out 100 emails, in-mails, and I only get 8 people that reply back to me. Okay. Now, maybe that's my responsibility because I'm not writing good in-mails. And I get coached on that, and I work on that all the time to make sure that I'm writing meaningful, abbreviated, impactful messages that make it easy for a candidate that says, yeah, I'd like to take 3 minutes and learn more about that role. Okay. But the fact is, most candidates don't reply to emails. So if you give me your email address and your phone number and you're in the vernacular of what I'm looking for, you move to the head of the class. Okay. Because I get to pick up the phone and call you right away. We get to engage in this job opportunity immediately. I don't have to wait for LinkedIn to send you the message, for you to get the message, and for you to send me a note back. Many times I'll get a note from a candidate that says, I'm really interested in that role. And I say, gosh, I wish I'd known you 7 months ago. You don't check email very often, do you? So I get messages from candidates a year later, 8 months later, 12 months later that say they're interested in roles, but um, the job's already closed. We'd already found somebody. And so anyway,
So
check
Kurt,
your
we have
check.
a couple of questions
Okay,
here.
let's go for it.
I have not added my phone number in my profile because I don't want spam calls or solicitation calls. I have my email address listed. Is that a problem?
That's okay. What Jeff also recommends is you use Google Voice.
Yeah.
That's a way you can put a phone number in there and it screens your calls for you. So either one work. Um, but as a retained search, and I'm not I'm I would put a phone number. And you're looking for a job, and you want to talk to as many people as you can, and and I get spammed a lot as well. And if it's a number that my carrier doesn't recognize, it tells me it's spam, and or I just let it go to voicemail. I check voicemail. So, they don't have your home address. They don't have the names of your children. They don't have the names of the schools that they go to. So I really think that your risk by putting your phone number in there is pretty small, personally. But I understand people's concerns and security, and so I'm very cognizant of that as well. But consider the Google option, and then once you get a job, you take the phone number and your email address out of there, so you don't have to keep it in there forever. It's just while you're in the job search. Um, and then I can look for key employment types. Am I looking for a full-time position or part-time or whatever? Then over on this right side, I've got all kinds of stuff on years of experience to years working in a current company to the degrees that you've got, seniority, company sizes, um, all kinds of other stuff that I can search for. So let's cut to the chase if that works, and let's go search for a job. Let's go try to fill a job. Patty, give me a job title that you'd like me to search for.
Account director.
Okay, so as I fill in account director, I'm going to put in director now because it'll change a little bit. It gives me a lot of other names that account director could be called. Okay. Here's a really important point that you, as an active candidate looking for a job, is number one is if I've got an account director job open and you are an account director, but your company called it a um, key account manager, and that's what you got on your resume, and you're submitting your application for that job, if the two titles are really the same, you might want to change your title on your resume to be account director instead of the other title I gave you. Okay, because there are and here's why it's not the applicant tracking systems as much. Here's one that I'd never heard before, but there's a lot of young recruiters out there that look at resumes, and if they're not exactly the exact job names, title specs don't match up directly, they don't want to take the risk of going to see the hiring manager with a resume that doesn't fit the full job immediately 100%. Okay. Where you got me, I'm a little bit more open minded. I'm a lot more open minded. I know that account director and senior account director and all those other titles are very similar. So we're looking for account director, but I'm going to throw a couple more in there. I'm going to throw in um, senior. I'm going to put in area. I'm going to put in channel. I'm going to put in project, and I'm going to put in senior. Okay. So we got a whole bunch of titles. Where do we want this person? Where's this job at, Patty?
It's in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay. So I can do Phoenix, Arizona, or I can do the greater Phoenix area. For
Greater
me,
Phoenix area.
I use the greater area. As a recruiter, we like to start our searches big. We like a big candidacy pool, and then we'll wean it down as we look at that big pool and identify these aren't the right candidates. I'm not looking at the people that I really want to see. So we're going to look at the Phoenix area, and that's it. We want this to be a workplace. We want them to be on site. Okay. And what industry would this person be a key account or an account manager in?
Consumer packaged goods or CPG.
Yep. So we can put in both. That's not sewer.
Oh,
Let's
maybe
just put
they
C.
do
I think I just put
CPG.
CPG. It pops up. Nope.
So strange. Maybe it's under consumer goods, or you could do consumer services, maybe.
That's really.
I'm surprised because it's a huge industry.
It is. I'm going to leave it consumer services for this search. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we're going to look for somebody that's full time. Okay. So now what I do is I go back up here and I put in a lot of pretty strict contingencies. Okay. So I hit enter and got to close this out here. I got to move you all around. I hit search here. And I told you I like to start with big numbers. This is not a big number. 43 candidates are open to work, 13 of them are active. And then this rediscovered candidates, those might be candidates that I look for or identified 15 years ago, 12 years ago. Internal candidates would be candidates that I've identified for other projects. And then you can always follow brands. So if there's somebody that's following my brand, then that would be something that I could plug in there. Hold on one second, everybody. I'm not going far. Just one second. Okay, so for that reason, let's just go in here and go clear this and go back in and put I'm going to put in account manager, and that's all I'm going to put in there because I want to see if I get I get more numbers.
Yep.
Okay. And if I hit enter and then I come back up here
And I have
and
another
go in.
question in the chat as well when you're ready.
Okay. And
All
then I
right.
go here, save search. I'm not going to save it. I don't want to save that search. Okay. Now I've got 85. So it didn't really go up dramatically. Okay. But let's do this. Let's go down here and put in, take that out and put in here CPG. Okay. Now your number goes where you wanted it to go, right? Now we're looking at 4.9 million people in the Phoenix area
1,000.
are looking for, yeah, 4,000 people are looking for 1,200 are active. Thank you so much. Um, make sure I got enough juice here for y'all. Um, so I've got a much larger database that I want to search for. So that is a really, really good sign. Because then we can start to wean it down as we look at particular people. Give me just a second. Unplug here. Now we're good, juiced. Okay, so let's just start looking at some of these contacts. Okay,
So
so
Kurt, just a quick question.
yeah,
A question from somebody, just to be clear, my last title was customer manager, but I'm looking for customer success manager or client success manager, account manager roles. Should I change my previous title to include the word success on LinkedIn?
yes, yes, 100%. Absolutely. That is a classic example because those are three titles that are all the exact same thing. Okay, though I mean I think they are in most companies they're going to be, but that is a great question and absolutely yes. And I would take the time if I was submitting my application to a company to make sure that whatever job I was applying to that I use the title that in that title. You're not lying on a resume. The and I take trust me everybody I take this stuff very very seriously. You can put anything you want on a resume. The only place you can't lie is a job application. Okay. So keep in mind that if you've got a job application, you want to make sure you use the title of what your actual title was. But
Mhm.
on a resume, you can fabricate whatever you want. Now, it's not going to get you very far ahead. So I don't recommend that you do that. But by changing the title, is going to open up the doors and it's going to allow you to have conversations and then from conversations they can determine whether or not you're the right fit. Okay, does that help?
Yep.
Okay, so we said we're looking for on site. We're looking for a new business development person. I know how that got in there. Yeah, we'll leave it in there. That's fine.
I don't
How
think it
that
was in there. You had some other companies listed too, which I
yeah,
was like,
that's
okay, that's very interesting.
account
Um,
manager, Phoenix area,
and
on
we
site.
have,
Okay, that's
yeah.
okay. These companies aren't in my search yet. I could click on those, but I
Uh,
haven't. Okay,
okay.
and then I'm full time. So these are all um, account managers, and you're going to see CPG, but CPG covers a lot of different categories, and people have a lot of different backgrounds. So let's just go down here to my friend Linda real quick so we can start looking at some profiles because that's where you're going to see where candidates make the mistake. Okay. So she's not an account executive, she's an executive assistant. Okay, so number one, it's not really what I'm looking for. Okay, so I probably wouldn't spend much time on her profile, but if I did, she's got no summary. She has selected that she's open to work and she's got the green wreath. Okay, um, she's got a little bit about what she's done, but she's given me not what she's accomplished, but what she does on a day to day basis. Okay. So, not a lot of help because she's used this new section that they put in skills, which
Mm-hmm.
is okay. I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but where I'm looking for candidates' highlights is in this section where it says served at the right hand That's where I want you to use your time and your words to build out that part of your profile so that it becomes more searchable for candidates. So Linda, sorry, doesn't have a great profile. I wouldn't be one that I would mimic. Let's go to James real quick. Okay, James is went to school at the University of Great Falls. He lives in Gilbert, Arizona. Up here at the top, he's in financial services. He's Actuaries Unlimited. And I don't know if a lot of you know what the actuary business is, but it's a very, very interesting business. But I can see through here that and I'm just scanning. So you can see, guys, gals, that I'm just looking at this really quick. First and foremost, strong summary gives me a lot of information, a lot of opportunities for keywords there. Okay. But he's actively looking, I believe, and he hasn't given me his email address and his phone number. Okay. So that's an issue because I now have to go and send him an email. He tells me where he's worked. He's been there for 2 years and he's given me a whole lot of keywords of things that he's done. This is not bad. I'd rather see it in a sentence format than lists. Okay. That's just my personal opinion, but I think it speaks loud for a lot of other recruiters. We want to see how you write. So use sentences to tell us and don't cut and copy from your resume. Okay. Done a good job, though, of building out all of his different jobs. Okay. But if I were him, okay, he's been here 2 years and a month. So he's demonstrated his ability to stay in a place for 2 years. But before that, look there, 2 years and 8 months. I can guarantee you, you hire this guy, he'll work for you for no more than 3 years. Okay. Down here in this particular case, he was only there 5 months. Okay. I would probably recommend that he put here after this Remax, the Workforce Experts McKesson contract. Okay. He was only here 7 months. Okay. There he was 2.5 years. There's a year and a half. Okay. So as a recruiter, he may have a lot of the skills I'm looking at, but the flag's up because he's never had a job longer than 2.5 months, 2.5 years. Okay. Or two
So
years and eight
Kurt,
months.
there's a
Yes,
question.
sir.
It says, what made you select James over Linda? You said she doesn't have a great profile, so I'm curious what attracted you to James' profile.
Okay, so I'm just using profiles. I'm not saying Linda's or James are better. I'm just using profiles to
You're just
share with
scrolling through
you.
to show.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. I think that James's profile is better in the sense that he's more elaborate. He's given us a lot more information, but unfortunately, he's had problems in his career where he's not been able to keep a job or he's not been able to hold a job for a long time. This is where when a recruiter gets on the phone, don't be offended when a recruiter tells you or asks you, take me through chronologically every job that you've had, why you left, and what motivated you, what motivated you, or why did you leave the organization to go to your next job? And it can be a painstaking experience for some candidates, but we as a recruiter, before I sit down with my client, I need to understand what was going on. There are many times when I take a candidate in that has had a number of jobs, and the company will say, "Man, the only thing I'm concerned about is the candidate's had a number of jobs," and I'll say, "He has, but wait, let's drill down a little bit further because I was concerned about it when I first looked at it, but I'm not now because I've gotten all the answers why he's managed and what happened in her career and why they've moved through these organizations." So we need to have that information. But if you've only been in a job in your LinkedIn profile and you've only been in a job for 4 months, 3 months, 5 months, either consider putting it as a contract or take it out of there. Okay. Now we don't like voids in our profiles, but I would rather almost see a void than to see somebody that's had 15 jobs. Okay. I know that begs a lot of questions, but that's just my general feedback.
So there's a question about, is the about section and the profile section the same?
Yes. Well, it's just they may call it different. It's the summary section that is what I think when you're in LinkedIn, they call it the about section,
Yeah.
but it shows up in your summary.
It used to be called about. I think it's called summary now.
Now it's called, okay, now they call it summary. Good. So here's Jason. He's open to new opportunities. Um, he's got, so he's used some good keywords about what he's done in his profile here. You know, regional sales manager, he talks about 20 years of sales experience in electrical with a BA in psychology university. I don't know that I use that space to talk about my degree in this section because again, that space is so valuable. And I think there's a lot of other keywords and a lot of other things that he could put in there that would help him accelerate his search more than putting things about your degree because that's in a separate section. Okay. It's just my feedback though. Um, he looks like he is still at Experience Brands USA, but he's open to new opportunities. So that would beg a question if I were to talk to him. Are you actively looking? It shows that you are, but it also shows that you're still working. Um, it may be because he's doing this as a consulting gig and he hasn't put it that as that, but I'd want to dig into that a little bit more. Um, he's also moved around a lot. Okay, you can see where when 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 you hear recruiters talk about job jumpers, these are the kind of experiences that we're looking at. And then we get one of your profiles that pop up and you had a job for 8 years, 3 years. That demonstrates to me that this is a candidate that's going to stick around and is not going to be looking for a new opportunity anytime soon. Again, I know there's a lot of circumstances that happen that are unpredictable and we can't manage and so forth. But do the best to make this look as seamless as possible. The other thing that I've seen on more often now than I did before is where I look at a candidate's profile and it looks like they had 8 jobs, but they were all with the same company. Okay. So whether it's on your resume or in LinkedIn, make sure that you're very clear with them to say that that you note that you were with this company, this parent company for 12 years, and these are the brands that you work for under that brand. Okay. That will eliminate a lot of the questions that recruiters have, and it'll keep you in the game a lot longer if you're getting tossed out because it looks like you're a job jumper. Okay.
And Kurt, for the summary section up at the top, would you also recommend that the first line is the email and phone number to contact you? Because when it's a recruiter who doesn't have LinkedIn Recruiter or they're not connected to you, they can't see more on the summary page.
Yep. So I definitely would put it at I put it at the bottom, my contact information, but you could put it right at the very top. My contact information, it's in one line, email address and phone number. And then after your search is over, you take that top line out and everything else works perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Um, so these are a few key things. I think the bottom line is what you're hearing from me, over and over and looking at profiles, and I'm trying to pick both active and non-active candidates. But is that number one, this summary section is critical. It is the most you can. I've demonstrated it here today. Every one of these profiles we've looked at have had very weak or very small summaries. Okay, so that is a huge opportunity for you to use Jeff Morris, use some of these other people that are doing presentations um, that can give you suggestions on how to build out a very robust summary. You can do it yourself. You can use LinkedIn and search for people and look at their summaries and see what they've got in there. And I don't want to say that you can plagiarize, not necessarily copy and paste, but if you see great profiles out there, when I was writing my profile 15 years ago when I first LinkedIn first started, I remember copying like 12 profile summaries, putting them into a Word document, and then rewriting it so that it was mine and not 15 other people. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking at profiles that when you do a search on your own and profile comes up to the top, one of the reasons maybe is that they've got a very robust summary section, and that may be something that you can learn from or gain some intelligence from.
And
Um,
Kurt, there's a question. If you're
yep.
transitioning careers from one industry to another, what would you recommend putting in the summary section?
Yeah. So I would, if I were, if so, that's a great question. If I was in consumer products and I was trying to move into healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
I would use a section. I would use a few sentences in that summary section to talk about that. That you understand. You know, I understand. My experience has been driven by the consumer packaged industry, but a turn in my career is influenced me to look heavily into the healthcare industry, and I think the similarities are in and whatever your job is. I mean, we're talking really big right now. Whatever your area is, whether it was in purchasing, whether it was in HR, what you know, give us the transferable skills that go between those industries. I'm confident that I can be successful in that category. But most times that summary section is still pretty generic and it's not job specific or industry specific. Um, so if I was a candidate that was looking for to move industries, I would work on the story and the pitch and the conversation that I was going to have with somebody in answering their objections before they ask the questions. Um, so you're focused on moving from consumer packaged goods into healthcare. You're targeting healthcare companies. You're doing all your research with healthcare companies. And now is the time to really beef up your story in describing to everybody that you talk to why that you're a better candidate than other candidates because you've got this experience. You've got to build a bridge for companies. You've got to build a bridge for executives to make sure that they understand why you feel like you're a strong fit for that organization. What are the questions we got there?
That's it for right now.
Um, I'm an open book, everybody. If you've got questions, certainly send me a note.
Oh, I
Um,
do have one question for you.
yeah,
I've had case study interviews where I've had case studies though before you speak with the hiring manager, but then also at the tail end of it. Is that more of an industry norm now?
you know, I worked for a company down in San Antonio, and it was for a chief executive, a chief administrative officer, and they wanted examples of work samples. They call it work sample examples or work samples. Um, and but I don't see it very often. There are times that I will recommend to a candidate that I think that this would be a good time for you to outline your 30, 60, 90 day, you know, strategy, your plan. But I don't ask for it for companies, and companies don't look for it in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, More common would be for companies to ask a candidate to come in and do a presentation. If it's a sales or a marketing role, they may want to see you stand up and give a presentation.
Mm-hmm.
That's not uncommon. But even in those cases, I think that companies get a pretty good feel for candidates' capabilities through the interview process these days. Zoom, face to face, phone calls. Um, yeah,
And have you seen an uptick too where it's like the one-to-one where like nobody's on the other end of the camera and you're actually having to interview into the screen and give your answers?
I have not, but I had to do a reference. I was asked by somebody I know really well that in Dallas, a young man that I helped get on a board, and just a great young man, and he asked if I would be a reference, and I got a call from a woman, and I don't think I could understand three of every 20 words she said. It was really, really, really difficult to understand this person. Um, and I did the best. And then I just at the end of it, I just said, I hope you're taping this, and I hope that the hiring managers can, you know, hear my articulation that this is a great candidate, and I think he's got the skills. That's that's the worst experience I've had recently. But I've not heard of those others. I wouldn't allow my companies to do that. That's not humane in my opinion. As far as you know, that doesn't help a company get to know a candidate. I don't know what roles would be good fit for that. Maybe
Yeah, there was somebody here on the chat that's saying that I have one that I need to do now. And that is where they're talking into the screen. And it's a one way. It's not like a
Wow.
person at the other end. So we're encountering this more and more in the job search world. So just
And
thought
do you
we'd
think that's
let you know
because of
that.
what we call this whole AI thing, Patty? I could be. Um,
Yeah.
I can see it where larger companies would use it as an example of screening for if they were going to hire 25 people, they might use it as a screening tool because they
Hmm.
can do 25 interviews simultaneously and then in 2 hours have the results and pick 5 candidates to go forward with. But any candidate, and I've scanned, the people on the phone here today. You all come from executive backgrounds, and I don't see that very often. To me, that would be a turnoff as a candidate, but I don't want to be short because if somebody's on the call here that's really desperate and to find a job and that's the first step of the interview process, you got to take it. You can't refuse it. So I'm sorry, but gosh, I would try to have fun with it. I'd figure out a way to have fun on that call. Some way, bring some spontaneity to it, or humor to it. Some way, to break it up.
Kind of bring your personality, right? Own
I
it. Make
would.
sure you
Again,
smile. You say this is why you're a great fit. But yeah, it's called a one-way interview. So what they're putting in the chat is, the company. It says it's a one-way interview. The company has several questions they'd like you to answer in a video recording. You'll submit. No AI is used to evaluate your interview. A real person will watch your videos. To learn more about the one-way interviews and how to prepare, click the button below or whatever.
wow.
Um,
Well, this is a time where again you don't have the opportunity to you don't know the questions they're going to ask, so you can't write out the answers to those questions. But I would be. If I had to do that interview, Patty, I would try to find 3 or 4 people that have just conducted that or done those interviews, and then I'd try to find a company that does those interviews to try to figure out what are they learning and what is their experience from it. That I've not heard of that. That's a new one to me.
and then Mark, it says you have an insight to share. I don't know if you want to get on camera and say what it is. Mark, are you there?
We'd love to hear from you, Mark. Unmute.
Maybe he's not wanting to. I did ask him to unmute.
Okay.
All right. Um, yeah. So if anybody has any other questions for Kurt, I think this has been really insightful to, take a look at what we do have. Oh, he put it in the chat here. Mark did. He said, some banks do utilize that format and might provide the questions ahead of time. These banks are actively
Okay,
considering
here I
lots
am.
of other
Sorry.
candidates. There you
Patty
are.
and yes, Kurt, I am finally online. I apologize for the delay, but I am online. I do have insight. One of the banks, I'm not gonna name any banks, but there's a good shot that I have experience here. So hint, hint. Um, the banks are looking at a considerable number of applicants. And from my experience, they do provide the questions ahead of time. So
Okay.
to answer so Patty, I think you mentioned that it's not just one. It's probably looking at a lot of other candidates, and you'd be right by saying that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's what I suspected. It's a job that, years ago I didn't get the work, but there was one of the casinos up in Oklahoma um, was looking for, again, I don't remember, they were hiring like 120 of one position. And that would
Wow.
be an opportunity because instead of spending a recruiter an hour on the phone with 120 candidates, you could interview 300 people. And even if it was a 15-minute interview, you then could determine which people have the ability to put 5 words together and can technology manage through a video call like that. um, but again, if you have the questions in advance, take the time to write the answers out. You don't look at those answers ever again, but just write out what you're going to say or put bullets together so that you can use bullets. But I would make sure if I was interviewing that I was looking at the screen and not down at notes, and
Yep.
that I was
And smile.
ready. I was, yeah, for sure. Do not read it. Don't put it up here. Don't be, I won't say who, using the teleprompters. Just write it out, not memorize it, and then speak to the camera and bring a lot of energy to the table.
And so what it says from this person in the chat says, mine says it will take 11 minutes to complete the interview. Do not have the questions. So they don't have the questions.
Yeah.
So they're gonna have to prepare like a regular interview, right? Star
Yep.
stories, everything,
Yep.
right?
Yep. And they're just going to have to be spontaneous and quick to the draw.
Mhm.
And that's where, again, I would just make sure I did it in the morning before I wouldn't do it at the end of the day. I wouldn't do it after I drank 4 cups of coffee. I do it, maybe I don't drink coffee, but
Unless
if I,
that's when their energy is, if their
yeah,
energy is better in the afternoon.
if their energy, do it when you're high energy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't do it at your lowest time.
Yeah.
Don't do it when you're expecting in 15 minutes, you've got to go do carpool, because you want to be patient and be, even though the only is going to take 11 minutes, um, don't try to cram it in between 2 appointments. And then just, as I said, I would think bringing a lot of energy to the table would be the best thing you could do. Mark, I don't know if you can add any value to that or add anything else to it, but
I can't speak about employers employers not providing the questions ahead of time. Typically, what I've heard from my peers is that the questions they are prepared ahead of time, and what you're advising, Kurt, is that make sure that and when the questions are provided ahead of time, to make sure that you do have answers jotted down before the interview. And again, it's typically it's typically during experiences or job opportunities when they're considering lots of other candidates. And especially what I've noticed is that interns that have applied for desirable opportunities typically have gone through that, and unfortunately. And so that's what I've heard through my experience and speaking with my peers.
got it. Good. Well, it's
And
good
then
feedback.
someone else had mentioned, I've had to do that type of interview. You would see the question and have 30 seconds to craft your answer and 2 minutes to complete your answer. So
Again,
maybe that helps.
yeah, that maybe helps again, but it's again, these are jobs. These aren't 4 executive role jobs. These are 4 jobs that there's, multiples, and it's a way for them to screen many people at a quick period, in a quick period of time.
Mm-hmm.
At
Yeah.
that particular company, they would use it to share with other departments if they had open roles. So in essence, you might have applied for one job, but they could show you to like 5 other departments, and then they could decide whether anybody wanted to talk to you. And it was a very large insurance company.
Yep.
And yeah, on one side of the screen, there would be the question, and then there would be the countdown. So you had to you'd see the question and you'd be like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
Is that like the countdown clock for baseball? I mean, that's got to be the worst, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. It's like the pitch clock in baseball, right?
Exactly.
And then when you start to answer, like the new, you would hit like the space bar, enter, and then it would give you the countdown for the 2 minutes to finish your answer. And it was hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to bring energy, like you're talking to a wall.
Yeah. No, I get it. I'm sorry for that, but you're right. The insurance companies, the banks, some of these organizations that hire multiples of people, I can see, and then an organization, a larger organization, where they can share the video with some, another department, 6 months later might be of value. But well, it's I don't know how to prepare for that. I think you just have to be, super on your feet, and again, to the degree you can bring energy and confidence to the table is all I can encourage. That would be it'd be a tough thing to practice, but if
Yep.
you could get practice doing it beforehand, that certainly wouldn't hurt anybody.
Practice interview team.
Yeah.
You know, you
But
could practice. They did give you a forum where you could practice as much as you wanted, but you didn't know what the questions were going to be. And I actually had, I can't remember if my connectivity went down and then I had to like go back in and
Wow.
it like went to the next question. So I didn't finish answering a question.
Hmm.
And the person who I talked to in recruiting was like, oh yeah, something happened when I was reviewing the file. Like my internet went down, like it dropped you out of the question. And I didn't tell her that I actually, the problem was actually mine. So I just thought,
Did you
oh,
get to
that's
the next
terrible.
interview?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I think part of it is, when my background is in finance, having people in finance, back at that time that were comfortable talking to a screen, was very challenging.
Sure. Yeah, no, I can see.
It was
Yeah,
pre-COVID. Now we
yeah,
all do it all the time.
yeah, no, right. That's a really good point.
So Kurt, we
Well,
have two other quick questions for you.
okay.
How do you effectively get a recruiter's attention without being annoying or sounding desperate?
Yep. So, yep. So there's no question. So, and this is a question that comes up every time, and I talk to candidates about it. I mean, it comes back to that. Most recruiters aren't going to take calls from candidates, blind calls. Okay, and it's not that they're bad people. If they don't have a job to fill that matches your background, they're not getting paid by you. They're getting paid by the company. And so that's why if recruiters seem short or they don't take the time to speak with you, it's not that they're a bad recruiter or they're not a nice recruiter. It's just that they don't have the time. I'll be completely transparent with you in that subject. I talked to a recruiter that's been in the business for longer than I have, 30 years, 25 years, 30 years, was with one of the biggest firms in the world. And within the last couple of years, year and a half, he went out on his own. And we have coffee once a quarter. And he says, so, what do you do during the day? And I told him I try to take one call a day from a candidate that's unemployed to coach them for 20 minutes on what are you doing, where are you going, what's working, what's not, to see if I can bring some energy to their search. And the reason I do that is it's part of my the pillars of my organization in paying it forward because I've got data, I've got information about what companies are looking for. So I do that. And he looked at me and he said, you have got to be kidding. He says, I get calls from recruiters every day. I don't take one of their calls. And I said, well, that's the difference between you and me. Maybe that's why I'm on Forbes and you're not. So I just I just want people to know that if a recruiter doesn't take your call, don't be offended. They get paid by companies, not candidates. But if you do have a recruiter that's working on a job or working with a company that you're targeting, then you've got to be a salesperson and you just got to pull out the sales shoes and do everything you can to get their attention, using all vehicles of communication, leaving them a voicemail, sending them an email, handwritten note. If they're in the same city, take that handwritten note to their office, deliver it to their office, ask the person at the front desk to deliver it to their office. If she says, oh, well, that'd be really fun. I'll put it on his desk, but there's a stack 4 feet tall because Jack never comes to the office. Well, great. Then don't put it in Jack's office. I'll find a different way to get this to Jack. But my point is, um, do everything you've got to do. When do you stop calling? When do you quit putting the pressure on? Is when the recruiter says, "Don't call me ever again."
All right, that's good advice. I have two other questions. I said, how soon should you follow up with a recruiter you've interviewed with?
Yeah, so I would encourage candidates to stay in touch with recruiters. If you've taken an interview, you've done an interview, I would encourage you to stay in touch with them every 3 or 4 days. If they haven't given you a timeline, most of the time when I talk to candidates, I give them timelines, pretty accurate timelines. I'm going to present your background to the company by this on this date, and I'll have more feedback for you then. But if they don't provide that information, you should be leaning in, and it's only because we're all human. Not that I'll ever make a mistake, but I have made mistakes. And there's times where I've interviewed a candidate and then whatever happened, a distraction 3 days, 4 days later, and that candidate is kind of gone out of my mind. And I've got 3 other candidates that I'm looking at. And then Jack calls me back and it's like, Jack, I'm so glad you refreshed my memory. Yeah, I need these notes from you before we can go forward. So don't, again, with recruiters, don't stop leaning in until they tell you to stop leaning in.
And then if you were looking for a job today, how would you do it in 2024? The job search has changed immensely.
It's changed so much. So the one tool that I recommend to everybody, and I'll go through it really quickly, Patty, but everybody on this call has got a network of friends and people that they've worked with in the past. And your network at this point in your career search is your net worth.
Mm-hmm.
Your network is your net worth. If you only have 50 people in your network, those are 50 people that don't know probably that you're actively looking for a job. And if they did, they might be able to help. So the tool that I recommend to candidates is they use this thing called the prayer letter. I came up with it 16 years ago. And the only thing I wish I had done is kept the details and gotten analytics back from everybody that uses it. But whether you're in finance, sales, marketing, or in HR, the prayer letter works. To activate your network, the first thing you do is you make a list of everybody that you've worked for, people you've met at airports, people you met on airplanes, people that tried to sell you products, people that you met along the way, neighbors, people that you've gone to church with, whatever it might be. That is your network. Again, it could be 50, it could be 500. Activate your network, make a list, email addresses and phone numbers. Call every one of those people. You've got 30 days to call them. All you're doing is if you get a message, it sounds like this. Hey, Chris, this is Kurt. You're a valuable part of my network. I'm actively looking for new opportunities. I wanted you to be aware of what's going on in my career at this point, and I'd love to spend 6 minutes with you if you've got time. Call me at this number. Every time you get somebody live, make sure you get their email address because people change email addresses like they do underwear these days. After you've made all those calls, now you go into month 2. I'm going to tell you, you got to touch everybody again. But you can't make those phone calls again. You have 500 people. That took you a month and it was painstaking to make all those calls. But now you got to put the prayer letter or some kind of social media into play. And so my recommendation is you grab all those email addresses, you put them into a BCC. And the email sounds like this. In the subject, it says, great people know great people. And in the body, it says, thanks for the opportunity to connect again. I continue to look for new opportunities. And some of the companies that I'm targeting this month include, and you give them 4 companies. You never send your resume and you never tell people what job you're looking for because in most cases you're going to intimidate people in your network. So you just give them target companies. And then it says, if you or anybody in your network has contacts with companies like these, I would greatly appreciate an introduction. Feel free to share this note with anybody in your network. And if there's anything I can do for you or anybody in your network, don't hesitate to call. I'll be back in touch in 30 days. If you have any questions about whether this tool works, I just encourage you to try it for 60 or try it for 4 or 5 months, 3 or 4 months even. Everybody that I've asked or suggested to do it, it accelerates their search by 30 or 40%. There was a candidate, this is a favorite story I've got. He started working with his family down in South Texas when he was 14 years old, went to college, continued to work for the family in the summers, graduated from school, joined their finance department, became the CFO. 30 years later, he was only 48 years old. The family, next generation came in and they decided they wanted a CFO that was younger. They let him go. He had never worked for another company. That's the only job he ever had. One company, okay? And he was the deer in the headlights. And he was a finance guy. And I say that because I can coach salespeople real easily because they know how to sell. They know that they are the product. But in this particular case, he was a finance guy. And a lot of finance people, and I don't mean to offend anybody on the phone, but most finance people aren't really friendly and they don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to sell, right? Okay, it's not that they don't know how to communicate. They just don't feel comfortable standing in front of people and selling stuff, right? Well, that's what you have to do. This guy came out of that meeting and he said, "You really want me to do exactly what I told you told me?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." He called me in 4 months and he said, "Kurt, I had 5 job offers." So The technology works. I wouldn't be setting you up for something that doesn't. I wouldn't be suggesting you send emails to people that are going to get you to get people angry at you. It works. It accelerates your search, and it gets all those people in your network working for you every day of the week.
Sounds like some great advice. I just have one other quick question, then we'll call it.
Yeah,
How do you feel about recruiters ghosting candidates after 6 interviews? Is that just a lousy recruiter? I find it unethical.
it's unethical and it's unacceptable. And I've probably done it, so I ask for forgiveness up front. I will tell you though, my wife can be the attestment to this, but it's not an excuse. It's the worst phone call I ever have to make. I hate it. I was working with a company and I was looking for an inside salespeople and I was interviewing some amazing people, and the CEO was rejecting them. And I almost didn't want to make the phone call for 4, sometimes 3, 4, 5 days afterwards because I was hoping the CEO would change his mind. Okay, so it's not right. I'm sorry if recruiters do it. I'm sorry if I've done it to you. But it happens, and just understand that we're also humans and we hate making those phone calls. Hate it.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
also why we hate it is because candidates want to know why. What did I do wrong? We don't get that deep data. We just don't
Right.
get a lot of data.
Yeah. We all want to know why. I mean, we've done so many interviews and talked with so many people. We've jumped
Yep.
through all the hoops. We're a
Yep.
great candidate. What's going on, right?
Yep. And I
And
and
then
I
they
know
can't
I can
tell
tell you
us.
this one candidate that I worked with. I mean, I know how he felt because I wasn't giving him an answer. And it was one of these situations, it was just last week. And I just didn't want to call him because I was really hoping that the CEO or the COO and the CFO would come into the CEO and say, "You're making a mistake. Hire this guy." Um, and I was really honest with him. I said at the end, I said, "I know you gave me every minute of time. You moved me as a priority during this time. I'm so sorry that I'm so slow to getting back to you on this, but here's why. I really was hoping that the CEO would make a change in his mind. He
Mhm.
didn't. So
Yeah.
it happens."
Well, so anyway, I think that's pretty much all I have, with the exception of a couple of final slides. And just so that everybody can see this, or maybe not. Maybe
Yep.
it's not going to work
No, it
on
came
me
up.
again. Oh, it wasn't moving forward, but basically I was going to remind everybody about any of our other upcoming career DFW sessions this week. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you can attend the pit crew sessions on Wednesday, which is the practice interview. And then Thursday mornings, there's South Lake Focus Group, which you can attend via Zoom. And then Friday mornings is the North Dallas Plano group that's run currently by Matt Keelan and Walt Glass, and they're guest hosting as well in Jeff Morris's absence. So with that, thank you so much, Kurt, for your insight today, showing us about LinkedIn Recruiter, giving us those tips and tricks. Really appreciate you answering all of our questions. And we'll have Kurt again in another month or so. So hopefully
And
you
I'll be
guys
back
will
in
come back.
Dallas and I'll be on time.
All right. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming today. Really appreciate it. And you guys have a great day.